RuggaMatrix is brought to you by Strike. Check out their new fleet tracking system. It will save you hundreds of dollars a month. Go to strike.com.au. Proud sponsors of RuggaMatrix International. Hello and welcome to RuggaMatrix International, and we're back in Sydney and we've got a special guest with me today, and let's not mess around any further, introduce him, Justin Harrison. Good, great to see you, mate.
You too, you too.
2001, we can't talk about 2001 without talking about the hero of the third test, and we're heading into it. How does that sit with you? The moment of the test match where the British and Irish Lions were pushing, they won the final line-out, there's no doubt they would have scored, but you decided to contest it. 12 years on, you're still talking about it?
Absolutely, haven't stopped. If anyone's forgotten, feel free to remind me, and I'll remind them about the story. Hero sits very well with me. But look, the line-out was all about making sure that I was completing my job. A second row's got to do that. So very lucky that it worked. Nostalgia and selective memory have allowed me to get a lot better than I was. So that's one of the moments where I actually contributed.
Well, 12 years later, the Lions series is as big as ever. You were in Melbourne after coming back from France, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But what were the feelings like?
Look, I didn't, I was part of the squad in 2001, didn't get to go to Brisbane and Melbourne. I got shipped off back to Clubland to having completed my duties as a tackling bag during the week. So I didn't get to go to Melbourne or Brisbane. So to experience the atmosphere down in Melbourne was fantastic. And particularly what will be a lasting memory of mine is the amount of people that were there, having been avid fans of AFL and Aussie rules. A lot of people that were drawn to the occasion on the back of the occasion. So for me, I think it's very pleasing. Australian rugby and the brand of Australian rugby is very strong at the moment.
Well, it's amazing. 12 years ago, we needed Joe Roff to turn the series, and he did it with a wonderful intercept. I remember going in the box, and Rod McQueen said, "Could you put a couple of lines together about my pending retirement?" And then halfway through the game, Ewan McKenzie says, "Yeah, I reckon we can win this." And then Rod said, "Yeah, I reckon we can win this." And then Glenn Ellis said, "Yeah, I think we can win this," and we did win it. And then famously, we went to Sydney and played in that third test. Tell me about the moment, and I was there in the management team, but tell me about the moment when you were asked to fill in David Giffen's shoes.
It was quite surreal, really, and obscure. I suppose most people find out, most players are given a phone call from the coach or an appointment and told that they'll play in a test at least in a week in advance. I actually didn't find out till Thursday, and David Giffen was ruled out through medical reasons with his hamstring. And it was late on Thursday that he came to my room to tell me. So Giff was actually the first bloke to tell me I'd be playing my first test, which is the third British and Irish Lions test. And after that, there was a series of phone calls and scurrying around, and Rod McQueen called me to his room, to his palatial presidential suite upstairs.
Yes, as he did.
Yeah, across the marble floor, and was seated, and he was told that I was going to play on the Saturday night. One of the most difficult things was that he told me to not tell anyone about it, because he figured that it was some sort of tactical advantage, or, well, that's what I considered. I thought that I'd be used as some sort of secret weapon unveiled at the last minute to unsettle the British and Irish Lions. But in hindsight, as a coach now, I think it was probably because he was worried that they would target me as being a novice. So I prefer the previous explanation.
And the funny thing is that the captain's run that day went for about an hour, and Rod McQueen coached the captain's run. I don't think I saw him do that at all in my time in the Wallabies, and I think you were all pretty tired at the end of it.
Yeah, it was. Listen, we were all under a lot of pressure, and Rod, more so than others, I suppose. None of us had a real idea that he was going to retire immediately after the series, and he, of course, had made that decision. So, it's pleasing. Rod McQueen is synonymous with Australian rugby success, and I'm pleased that in some small way I played a role in continuing the myth of the Rod McQueen legend. But look, he's a good coach, and he's a good ambassador for Australian rugby.
All right, Justin, so before we talk a bit more about your heroics on that night, that wonderful night in 2001, and we've been seeing a lot of replays recently, James Horwell, what about the emotions he must have been feeling? He escaped suspension, and then to go through that whole rigmarole again where the IRB said, we'll have another hearing, and he got let off again. Fair disruption, but the emotions for a guy who's very emotional, and you were emotional when you played too.
Yeah, certainly it was disappointing to see the process that he had to undergo. You would expect, being proven not guilty already and having no case to answer, that you can then concentrate on your profession. You know, every athlete on the field is doing the best he can, and some players push the boundaries of the game and the law. But Jimmy Horwell is certainly a player who plays well within the rules of the game, and he's very aggressive, and he's a great leader and talisman for Australia. You know, it was disappointing, but in a weird sort of way, I feel that it's galvanised the team around him. You know, pressure has a habit of doing two things: it separates and divides in an unhealthy environment, or it galvanises and produces performances. And I feel that we're going to see the latter on the weekend because of that process.
All right, well, let's just to quickly hear from James Horwell and Robbie Deans after that decision.
I love what I do, and it means a hell of a lot to me to represent my country, and not only to represent it, but the opportunity to lead it in what is probably arguably the biggest game in this country since the Rugby World Cup final in 2003. So I'm very excited at that opportunity, and you know, now we can, as I said before, focus on the game, and that's what's important.
And it's not a stain on your character. That's the important thing as well.
Yeah, I feel very vindicated by the way it's gone.
It's certainly, from the group's perspective, they'll be stoked to have James back. You know, he's right at the heart of what we do, and you've seen what it means to him, and that flows on to the group. So it's good to have him out there with us.
So James Horwell and Robbie Deans on him, or the Australian captain, being free to play this weekend. It would have been a devastating blow for Australia. Could they have won the game without James Horwell this weekend?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, Australian rugby is in a position now where we have reasonable depth, and players have been exposed to high pressure situations before. And you know, the uncertainty of James Horwell's absence, I'm sure, would have galvanised the players again. You know, I think that they've been through a difficult period of inconsistency in performance. You know, and many would argue that the first two tests, the worst teams have won the match on the night.
Yes. So
you know, I feel that that sort of consistency and inconsistency of performance will be arrested in the third test. You know, Jimmy Horwell, of course, he's an addition and a huge asset, but there are many other players in that squad that are capable of rising to the occasion. All
right, so Ewan McKenzie talked about to me before the first test that he thought the most impressive player in the whole Lions outfit was Paul O'Connell. Firstly, do you agree? And is it a devastating blow that he's not playing in these last two tests?
Look, he's a loss. There's no question he's a loss. Devastation's, you know, probably an alarmist point of view, but certainly, you know, he's a talent in a squad, in a difficult tour, and in a strange environment for a lengthy period of time. You need talisman, and you need players who are able to gather players around them and give them the serenity and focus that is required. Senior players, without a doubt, give that. And that's the reason why possibly I was able to extend my career a lot longer than it should have been. For some reason, people thought that I was a deserved member. I started late, so I finished late. But he's a loss without a doubt. You know, whether he didn't participate in the Six Nations, so he wasn't the best performed second rower in the competition from the Northern Hemisphere. Importantly, he was part of the group to give some guidance. You know, I think that he's done that role. Now, it wasn't just about playing performance. You know, Jeff Parling is an outstanding second rower, and Alwyn Jones. You know, there's some great players that are there to take his role, and they've still got Brian O'Driscoll, who's the talisman of the entire Northern Hemisphere, it seems.
Tactically, and you're a coach now. I've got to say, you were a coach when you played. Actually,
an outstanding coach.
Outstanding. You were an outstanding coach when you played, mate.
Had to do something. Wasn't a great player.
But Justin, your assessment of the two coaching teams and how they've matched up against each other. Who's had the edge in the first test, tactically, and also the second?
Well, look, it's no question that the British and Irish Lions, you know, and Northern Hemisphere sides, without a doubt, will come to Australia or play against Australian opposition in any part of the world and target the set piece. You know, the scrum and the line out, the combative nature of the tight five is usually where Northern Hemisphere sides look to gain ascendancy and dominance consistently. You know, I think from that point of view, the British and Irish Lions have been a little disappointing. You know, I don't think that within themselves they're satisfied with their scrum performances. Certainly, we saw elements of their mauling ability in Melbourne. You know, it was certainly they were rewarded a couple of times with some significant penalties and territorial advantages. So I think that they're looking to strengthen that. And Warren Gatland is a coach who is used to a combative style of game with the Welsh, and he coached them to a significant victory against England. So his pressure and handling of players and man management is clearly successful. Conversely, Robbie Deans, tactically he's trying to select the best players in the country. Now, many would argue that possibly is not the best tactic to employ, given that some of the combinations are a little bit questionable.
Yes.
But he's managing a group of players who are young and enthusiastic, and some of them are novices to the international arena, on the back of athletic ability, us looking to put together performances. The challenge for him will be making sure that it gets cohesion, and I think that this week they will have spent a lot of time on their starter players, what they're doing off scrum and line out, because it looks like it's an area that we've got parity and in fact sometimes advantage.
Spoke to Ben Alexander for the match program, and he's done really well at tight head. Have you been impressed with him? Because he's been thrown about both sides of the scrum, but he's done a really good job up there. He
has. He should be commended for his ability. When he made the decision to move to tight head, I was a member of the coaching staff at the Brumbies. For a blink of an eyelid, but he made the decision and against advice from many people around him. Listen, you should, So he's made that choice and done reasonably well, And importantly, a transition across to the tight head brings with it a whole different focus on the style of game that you can play as well. Ben Alexander likes to run the ball and score tries and all sorts of things. So he's had to play a bit tighter on the back of
that. So tactically. I've been reading some of the press in the UK since Saturday, and they've been hammered tactically up front, and they should have made a replacement earlier than they did. But they did do a pretty good job, the Australian scrum. Andrew Blade's involved, and he's a very astute scrummaging coach and a great scrummager in his time. So it's a bit of a boost for Australian front row, tight five work, that they were able to put one over the British and Irish Lions.
Yeah, it's significant.
Or at least a half, anyway.
Yeah, well, yeah. Look, for me, being overseas now and being part of a foreign environment, Northern Hemisphere and in Europe, the brand of Australian rugby for a long time has been regarded as having. Tactically, we were always very strong and astute. Athletically, we were competitive, but not physically dominant. And our intellectual property when approaching test matches and pressure situations always normally, most of the time, gained ascendancy. Now, at the moment, we are a team that's being recognised for being combative in most of the areas that we need to be without being dominant. So that sort of consistency of performance is what we're looking for. Andrew Blades is certainly contributing to the rhetoric of giving the Australian scrum some substance and backbone, and in the end, look, coaches, one thing I've learned about coaching is that I can do the best job possible, and sometimes my best is not the best. It's not good enough. Sometimes someone's best is not good enough. But as a coach, I can ensure that a team can lose that I'm coaching by preparing them poorly, by overtraining them, by doing things wrong. I can put together the best program for a week to give the players the best opportunity to win a game. They can still lose that match. So it's very much about making sure the ingredients are there to provide the players with the best opportunity. Andrew Blades, Nick Scrivener, Robbie Deans, these people are providing these players with the best opportunity, and on the night it's going to be up to them, of course.
But it actually starts one step further, and that's at the selection table. So we've already touched on, and I'm one who believes that James O'Connor should not be playing 10. I don't think he should be playing anywhere closer than 14, 11 and 15 actually. And I think Curtly Beale's a better option at 10, even though he's coming back. And even Christian Lealiifano moving in. Under Stephen Larkham, he's become a great player, and a good emerging coach is a guy like Stephen Larkham, who was without peer as a 10. So maybe selections where it all starts, mate.
Absolutely. Selections are a beast that need to be wrestled with rather than taken casually, and certainly Robbie's no doubt wrestling some demons with those selections. There's clearly been issues outside performance alone that have negated Quade Cooper's selection.
Yeah.
And look, I got to agree with it. If you take a stand against someone who describes the Australian environment as toxic, then he needs to be made an example.
But he's been punished, Justin, and he said he's.
Has he?
Well, he copped a $60,000 fine. He was suspended. I mean, when he's copped a public,
if he misses the British and Irish Lions too, he will have been punished.
Yeah.
But look, if you want to pick the best 10 in the country, on performance alone, it's
Yeah.
Quade Cooper.
Yeah.
If you want to stick with someone who shows areas of promise, and but then the counter
There's a
to that as well,
combination
that O'Connor and Kirtley certainly
Yeah.
were outside of discipline when they got up to a few things in Melbourne. So who knows? You know, look, it's a difficult beast to wrestle, but all we can hope for is that Australia win.
You're very careful these days, Justin.
I've got to be. I've been in too much trouble.
Well, mate, I haven't got you for a long time, but I want to quickly get a couple of things from you. Your prediction for the third test. It's going to be a packed out ANZ Stadium. The Australians, you know, you get the feeling that momentum's behind them, don't you? And you know, although James O'Connor, I don't think set the world on fire at 10, he'll be better for it for the weekend. And I think both Kirtley and he dipped a bit on Saturday, but they'll live for this game. But the changes are going to be important too for the British and Irish Lions. They'll come to play on Saturday night. It's up there with the game in 2001, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. You know, the history and anecdotally, it's come down to the third and deciding test, which is fantastic for the brand of rugby in the world. But you know, the British and Irish Lions will be looking to play a game of percentages. They need to get dominance in the scrum, make sure they're securing lineout. This lineout has been inconsistent. You know, it's been disruptive. They haven't had clean possession. You know, conversely, Australia, we're looking to have the combinations working well. You know. Whether James O'Connor was running an incorrect line or Israel Folau was out of position remains to be seen. There's certainly not the cohesion in the back line that we've come to expect from an Australian outfit, and there's no doubt that they will have addressed that this week. So, you know, for us, gaining parity and ascendancy in line-out and scrum, we need to give our backs the best platform to perform. You know, and I think that there's no question in Melbourne that we lost the breakdown area. You know, we were well beaten. So Sam Warburton's exclusion from the game in this third test could be pivotal for us. And I'd really like to see George Smith part of the group.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to miss out as well.
Yeah, which I think's pretty silly.
I agree. If you want someone to have your back in those dying moments, George Smith. I mean, you've got no doubt, you've seen him, that he is as good as he's ever been in terms of physicality, because he just seems to be impervious to damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, when you're selecting teams, it's about being fair on the back of performance. So George Smith has performed, was the best 7 in Super Rugby when he came back here. Michael Hooper's a good player, Liam Gill are good players, but Michael Hooper's been put under enormous pressure in this series, and he's not as effective as George Smith at the breakdown. Simple as that.
And what else does George bring to you? Because he's an experienced player.
Well, he's another talisman.
Yeah.
He's another galvaniser. He's calm. You know, he's a player that through actions and focus can bring people up a level rather than descend to theirs. And it's important to have those players in huge games like this.
Yeah, and it's going to come down to the moment. And the moment you had 12 years ago was contesting a line-out, which, you know, I guess logic would have said defend. In your words, how did it all transpire? Because it's good to read, but I'd like to hear you talk about it.
Well, the logic for me was that, you know, defending them all's a lot harder than taking the ball off them so they can't start one. So that was my goal and my focus. And leading into the series, I'd had a little bit of success as a defensive line-out player against Australia A and Gosford and the Brumbies. And it just made sense to me to try and contest the ball. Of course, you know, there was the risk of them winning and setting a maul on its way. But it was, I suppose, an opportunity for me to try and influence the result of the game, or at least contribute to the performance. You know, one of my fears was taking a jersey and filling space and never being seen again. So the first test for me was about doing the best I could, and that was part of my job description. You know, disrupting line-out and doing the best I could. So, you know, when we arrived there at the touch, Michael Foley was in front of me and Roddy Moore was behind me, and Kev was in the 5-metre channel. I remember saying, look, I'm going to have a go at this. And I think they were a little bit surprised, but luckily for me, you know, the two unsung heroes of this, Michael Foley and Maury, who actually got me off the ground, because I can't jump out of bed, let alone contest the line out more than 6 inches above my head. So they need to be given due recognition, but I'm happy to take all the limelight.
How good was the lift?
No, it was pretty ordinary, but it was just enough. You know, look, there's so many different moving parts in a line out, so I was very lucky. There's another line out after that, in fact, so, you know, we still had some time to lose the match, and the boys, my teammates at the time, did well to defend, and we ended up winning.
There were great celebrations, I remember, after that. Owen Finnegan in particular, who's still celebrating, by the way, on the 6th.
He hasn't stopped.
He hasn't stopped. When you sit back 12 years ago, and I know you don't want to be always remembered for one thing, but it's not a bad thing to be remembered for.
Look,
it's better than them rolling over and scoring
the wrong
try.
thing. Yeah, sure. Look, one of the things about it is that a lot of people have said to me, you know, what did you do after that? So, as in, where did you go? That's why I stayed in Australia for another 4 years and played 30 odd more tests. But look, it's not to be remembered for something that was positive rather than negative is what every professional sportsman hopes to achieve. Well, this one anyway. I can't speak for everyone. So I'm glad that I was able to contribute to Australian rugby and a significant period of Australian rugby. So.
Well, you not only contributed to that, you contributed to the Brumbies for a long time, and then after giving it to the Waratahs for so long, sacrilege, you joined the Waratahs, and I worked with you there as well, and that was a great time.
And we didn't lose to the Brumbies.
No,
so
exactly.
Beat them twice. So,
and you know, I used to love, you know, and I know you've been sort of cautious today about a few things, but I loved when Owen Finnegan said, we're going to come up to New South Wales and put 50 on the Waratahs. And you know what? Came up to New South Wales and you put 50 on the Waratahs in that semi-final.
Yeah.
You actually show a bit of confidence and head into the game.
Yeah, look, they were heady times and sort of utopian times for us. You know, as Brumbies, we had luckily probably 14 or 15 of the world's best players at the time. You know, any of those players that I was playing with, luckily, were able to walk into a genuine World 15 side and dominate. You know, so the era of the timing for me was fantastic to be associated with those players. And the other part of it was we were confident because we prepared well. I knew that we were the best prepared side more often than not when we took the field. Yep. And you know, the rest was up to luck or misfortune or conditions if we did lose, but not through lack of preparation.
And of course then you finished up here and went overseas. Now you're with Narbonne, and you were lacing up the boots as late as last year.
As late as January this year. Yeah, look, I went there, relocated the family to the south of France to give ourselves a bit of a different perspective on life, and as a new father, that's all my focus is now, about providing for my 2 boys and my wife. And the job luckily came along through an Australian investment group and interest, and Racing Club Narbonne became an opportunity for me. I'm now the head coach there, and you know, that presents all sorts of lovely challenges and I guess moments of achievement for me to concentrate on. Having, you know, I had to come out of retirement to play just because we had a few injuries and not the budget to pay anyone other than me, nothing. But look, it's a fantastic environment to be in. Very passionate about rugby, this you know, Languedoc-Roussillon region. And you know, for my coaching, it's fantastic because, you know, I respond to simple, clear messages as a player, and as a coach now, learning a new language as well. It's redefining my message and making sure that it's short and sharp.
Will you come back and coach in Australia, hopefully?
No, I don't think so. It would be an unusual set of circumstances that would see me come back here.
Long term.
Who knows? Look, I can't predict.
Still a young fella.
3 or 4 years ago, I wouldn't have said, you know, I'd be living in the south of France and learning French. So, who knows? But the south of France has been a welcoming country for me and given me many opportunities. So.
Yeah, many Australians over there too. You know, Matt Giddo, obviously involved with Toulon, and many others.
The Jaguar up there, and Drew Mitchell's heading over, and I'm sure Adam Ashley will follow him when he's finished cashing in on his notoriety here and his ordinary beard.
Yes, a very ordinary
patchy beard.
Mate, just a final word of advice for Australia. You took a risk in the final moments this weekend. What do they should be digging deep for in their rugby souls on Saturday night?
Well, hopefully don't let it get to that position. Be well ahead before the last dying stages of the match.
What if they find themselves protecting a lead like they did the other night, and it was only a couple of minutes and they almost lost it? Yeah,
absolutely. Look, you know, Australian rugby and Australian athletes are always our best when we're in pressure situations and we attack. You know, we need to play. You know, it's Captain Obvious, but we need to be aggressive and combative and fearless. You know, and I think that in Sydney, in Brisbane, we were fearless because it was the first test, and we played well. In the second test, we were fearful of the result. We were worried about what if we lose, it's all over. You know, the third test presents a huge opportunity for us to make sure that we are dominant, because, you know, we have a side now that's 3 tests older, or second tests older, 2 tests of experience having played together, which is important to note. You know, the British and Irish Lions have played a number of games leading into this. So there's inconsistencies that will be ironed out, just like the 2001 squad did. And the third test, I think, will be their best performance.
Right, Justin Harrison, we could speak forever but can't. Just a quick reminder, make sure you get your match programs here, put together by the great Mark Cashman.
Get the programs.
Yes, exactly. The Q&As are fantastic.
In-depth, some surprises, some probing questions. It's got everything.
Ben Alexander's the guy we speak to this week. And
no sealed section though. So
no. Well, actually, that's over there.
Yeah.
Just off camera. Justin, great to speak to you, mate. Love to catch up to you down the track and talk coaching with you. It's really fascinating.
Absolutely.
And one of the best coaches who played anyway.
Exactly.
There is Justin Harrison joining us on RuggaMatrix International. We'll be getting one more show in before the third test. We'll have full coverage with Mark Cashman finally after the game on Saturday night. Thanks for all your feedback. Thanks for joining us on the road trip as well. It's been a lot of fun. And we'll be back later in the week with our final word on the Lions series. See you then.